Alright, I feel like I'm ready to continue. Have something healthy, a berry shake, something unhealthy, my coffee, but very, very good. It's with cayenne pepper actually. I like my life to be spicy. By the way, let me know in the comments if you like these videos outside. They're a little bit more authentic. You know, the wind, the hurricanes, and so forth. So let's continue a little more with the chess analogy. I thought of some more cool things. So if you play chess, you know that chess are split up. A chess game, a traditional chess game, normally goes through an opening, middle game, and end game. But sometimes if you blunder really bad, it doesn't ever get to a middle game, and if you blunder badly, it doesn't get to an end game. But regardless, so there are these three stages. And also there's something called tactics, which is the different little techniques in interpreting. We would probably, in translation too, we would call them techniques. And there is the general strategy. And it really helps to understand both. And there is also, just rote memorization of patterns. So let's see how we can compare this. A lot of people want to learn the tactics. I've already said that the tactics very often flow out of good positional play, just like in translation interpreting, you'll get something clever just by understanding the board, right, the context, the situation, and being solid about your translation. But it's good to know the tactics. In interpreting, these would be things like flipping the structure to get the meaning, translating 2 or 3 words as one, translating one concept that just doesn't translate as one word as 2 or 3 words, as in a definition translation. Something that I often like to call the fir tree technique. And if you haven't seen my video on that, then I should probably record one, because I don't know if it exists. So what else would be techniques in translation and interpreting? Looking for synonyms, obviously defining your words, but this is more like basics. Knowing how to stop the speaker politely and courteously and ask for a definition. Like, these are all different, that borders on being basics and techniques. Techniques would be like, for example, this is something one professor of translation and interpreting taught me. I was interpreting and he came up to me and he complimented me and he said, one thing that I noticed is if there's something really simple, you can just spit it out way at the beginning, even if it was said at the end, just like some factual piece of information, just to avoid keeping it in your mind, just spit it out at the beginning, right? Like, for example, if something is hard for you, if it's the birth year or the birth city, you spit it out at the beginning. These are things that are akin to tactics in chess, right? And tactics, again, are like these little stratagems, these little cunning ways of cheating your opponent on the board. Now, the strategy is just understanding, the strategy in chess is basically, what do you want to do? You want to develop your pieces. You want to castle the king. You want to connect the rooks. You want to put your pieces on the best possible positions. And then if you have a material advantage, you want to trade it off so that you can materialize it in the end game. And in translation, it is the general principles of like, how do you even translate? You define your words, you look for synonyms, you look up words, you do your research, then you do your, what I like to call a review or a meaning check, then you do your style check, then you do your proofreading. You see, that's like proofreading as the end game. The preliminary research and the initial translation is like the opening. And then the middle game is like the very nitty-gritty when you're in the game, pitching and the blood, sweat, and tears of it all. What else was I going to talk about? So, rote memorization. Like, there are a lot of players in chess who just study openings and hope that they'll get better by rote memorization. And don't get me wrong, like, studying openings does help, but with understanding. Because if you know the opening theory, while your opponent is thinking and his or her clock is ticking, especially if it's a blitz game and they have to figure out the theory in your head, you already know, if I go here, then this happens and this happens and this is the opening trap. And many chess players before me have already, invented the wheel or the bicycle or whatever. So it's good to know, but not rotely, not like an automaton, because if your opponent plays one different move in an opening, you can't just play the same thing or sequence you memorized. You have to then play mindfully. So just like in translation interpreting, if I'm preparing for a job on, haircutting or engines or weaponry or juice making, obviously I'm going to memorize rotely the terminology. But, let's say that the words, this is just a silly example that came up. If somebody says the word juicy at a juice conference, and they don't mean juicy isn't juicy, they mean the story was juicy, you can't just be an idiot and translate it literally, right? So regardless of whether or not you're memorizing remote things, you have to be a thinking chess player of translation. Let's see if there's anything else. If you blunder in interpreting, for example, let's take our favorite juicing conference, and the lecturer says, we make smoothies and juices and coffees and teas, and you make smoothies. And they already say it, and you realize that you don't necessarily have to interrupt them. I mean, you could, but you can also just slide it in cunningly and craftily into your next segment. For example, they start talking about how they make juices, and you say, okay, so this is the way that we make juices, but by the way, we also make smoothies. And you covered your bases. That's something that I will sometimes use. Sometimes you have to do it overtly, like for example, in this depot that I did just 2 days ago, I realized that I said the Russian word used was sukhaжилия, and I used the right word, and then I doubted myself, which you should never do. I said ligaments, and then I was like, but is it maybe tendons? No. Sorry, she said связки, and связки is ligament. And it even makes sense because the Russian root word is to connect, and ligament is ligare, to connect. So I shouldn't have doubted myself, and then just to cover my behind, I said ligaments and tendons, but tendons was an addition. So at the end of the depot, I was like, I'd like to remove the word tendons from the record because it was an addition. And at the beginning, when she was talking about going to a chiropractor and getting electrical stimulation, STEM they call it, the right word was just slipping my mind, and I said something like electric shock, but in the chiropractic fashion, or it was clear that, we weren't talking about psychiatric electric shock, but it still wasn't the best word choice, so I put that on the record too. Like I said, by the way, when I said electric shock at the chiropractor's office, I meant electrical stimulation, because I came up with the right word the second time she used it, but not the first time. So those were two, I would call them inaccuracy. At least the second one was inaccuracy. The first one was maybe a mistake, but I fixed it. And that's another thing that I maybe wanted to mention about chess and translation. Just because you made a blunder, unless the blunder was getting checkmated, even if you lost a queen, even if you lost something bad, does not mean that you have to give up right there and then. There is still hope for you. I have actually ensured winning positions and then lost winning positions. In fact, in a book by Jose Raul Capablanca, there is a sub-chapter called The Danger of Safe Positions. And that actually makes sense in life and in translation too. I'll give you an example. But just because you blundered, it does not mean you have to completely deflate in spirits, Just carry on, fix it if you can. If it's not fixable, you just bloody carry on, And in life as well, and in running, and in anything else. So that's important. And demeanor is really important. I can't even believe I didn't mention it. Your demeanor, your bearing is probably of the utmost importance. It will happen to me in chess because I'm not a newbie, I'm a solid player. And I'll mention at the end of this video where I stand or sit or lie in chess. But, in interpreting, this never happens. If I made a mistake or an inaccuracy or even a blunder, which happens very, very rarely, but I will not lose my nerve because I'm a grandmaster and I know that it happens. And I know that I can pretty much get myself out of anything I get myself into. Even if I'm completely mentally meandering and lost, this has happened to me. If it has ever happened to you that, for example, somebody just said a 2-minute segment or even a 30-second segment and you're like, what did they just say? I sort of panic for half a second. It doesn't happen often, but it has happened. And then I start somewhere. You have to start somewhere. And then you get out of it. But in chess, it sometimes happens to me that if I lose a game on a blunder, or even within one game, if I blunder, then I go down this rabbit hole or down this chute and I start blundering more and I start introverting and I start self-flagellating, and I just start coming down on myself, but hard. But why? okay, get over it, you blundered, even grandmasters blunder, and just move on with it. And a lost move is not a lost game, and a lost game is not a lost match, right? So it's just the same. One wrongly translated word is not the end of the world. Like, fix it for the record if you're in court, if it really, really, really matters. Sometimes if I use my judgment, if it doesn't matter, I might not even fix it for the record. If it was an inaccuracy, I probably wouldn't fix it. If it's, anything that might matter in court, so in court I would actually err on the side of caution, but use your own judgment, And even if you had one bad day of interpreting, which is like a game, or one bad assignment, or one bad hour, okay, so go for a walk, have a coffee, and come back and win. I did that recently in chess. Like, I had a streak of several bad games in a row, and then I came back, right? Another thing you have to realize that breakthroughs don't always come immediately. Sometimes it takes quantity to gain quality. Like, for example, I've been studying intensively for several weeks, over a month, and I didn't see improvement. But then, like, last week, I beat a player whom I had never beaten before. And I was like, okay, note these little victories, because these little victories will turn into bigger victories. Even though I lost all the other games to him, I was like, the thing that stuck in my mind is, okay, I beat Eric tonight, and Eric is a really solid player. I think that was a very important point. Coming back, let's close, but let's come back to what we started with, confidence. And it's much better to make a mistake confidently than make it diffidently, or make it, embarrass it, because you attract attention to it. In chess, especially if it's blitz, your opponent may not even notice your mistake, especially if it's like bullet or blitz. Bullet is 1 minute games, and blitz is 3 or 5 minute games. They may not even notice. And just like in translation and interpreting, but by being very ashamed of it all, you draw attention to it, which is not good. So confidence is good. Ideally, the best confidence is confidence based on knowledge and experience. But to fake it till you make it is great, because you're not always starting out with experience. Okay, enough Vladi ramblery, which is Vladimir rambling. Let's close. I'm going to tell you briefly about my chess goals and reading, which I don't have, and so forth. And then we'll close out with a call to action. But I'm sure we'll do more chess videos in the future, because it's become a love of mine. So my modest goal is to actually get to what's called Candidate Master, which is around 2200. If you know anything about chess, right now on my good days I can beat, like, if I'm really lucky, I can beat a 2000 rated player. Usually not, but if I'm playing solidly, I'm playing around 1800 level, which is under a Candidate Master. National Candidate Master starts around 2000, and then International Candidate Master is 2200, a Master is 2300, International Master is 2400, and Grandmaster is 2500, and Super Grandmaster is 2700. So my conservative goal is to at least play blitz and rapid chess. And I can't believe I didn't talk about that. Translation is like the classical games of chess, where you have almost all the time in the world. Consecutive interpreting is like rapid chess, where you have some time but not too much. And rapid chess is anything 10 minutes to 25 minutes. And blitz is like simultaneous, where you just don't have much time to think, right? So it's a different game, and people's ratings differ. Like, I love rapid and blitz, so I want to practice mainly that. And my goal would be to get, we'll see, maybe master. And if I'm feeling really ambitious, I definitely know I have the intelligence to be a grandmaster, but it does take study. Actually, my very ambitious goal, and I'll share it with you guys, is in interpreting and translation. Here's my confession of the profession. I'm not necessarily profoundly trained in an orthodox fashion. I don't have a master's degree or a bachelor's degree in translation. I never went to school in translation. I'm just naturally smart. I come from a family of linguists, and I studied a lot of philosophy and semantics and used that knowledge to underlie and put the fundamentals in, which actually makes me a little different, a little unconventional, but a very solid interpreter. So I didn't study all these techniques that people study at like Middlebury and wherever else they study translation and interpreting, but I came up with these on my own because I combined a different field like philosophy, studies of the mind, studies of communication, and I just naturally had a talent or a knack for it. So in chess, my goal is sort of the same. Like actually, I don't have years because I'm not starting to study chess at 7 or 6 or whatever. I did learn to play that chess at that age, and I think I had a talent and a flair, but for years I would be away from the game. So right now I want to take my intelligence and take all the skills from other endeavors of life and bring it into chess. And that's a challenge to you as well. Do something like that in your own pursuit. And here's my call to action. First, aim for being a grandmaster of whatever language pair you are in, translation, interpreting. And by the way, I keep saying that we're going to close, but here's actually one more really important point. Grandmasters are not narrow specialists. Yes, they each have their style of play, and some are better in positional play, and some are better in closed games, some are better in opening games, some are better in end games, but they can play anything and everything. And they're very precise. Like it was said to me recently that if you lose a pawn to a grandmaster, you're done. This isn't the case if you sacrifice a pawn or if you gain a benefit for losing a pawn, but if you just outright lose it, you're done. That's like the level of precision that they operate on. So be a grandmaster of translation. It's about precision. Chess is also about precision. It's an art and a science. It's about calculation. And it's about a flair. I can never finish this video because I keep thinking of topics to talk about, but we'll have to maybe split it up into different parts. Become a grandmaster. But grandmasters, again, they're not specialists. They can play the Queen's Gambit, and they can play the King's Gambit, and they can play e2, e4, which is starting from the king, and they can play d2, d4. You'll never catch them off guard. Well, sometimes you can catch them off guard. But they are not, they don't have tunnel vision in just one field. So if you want to be a grandmaster, try out different fields. Do medical, do legal, do literary, do simultaneous. You can't just say, I don't do simultaneous. I mean, come on. It's like a grandmaster saying, oh, I'm sorry, I don't play when white starts from d2, d4. And their opponent would look at him and they'd be like, what? I just played d2, d4. Go on and move. So sure, you can specialize in something you like, but don't just be an arrow specialist. And Magnus Carlsen actually said something really cool. He said, the best chess advice I had been given is to be curious and stop playing the very same openings that I feel comfortable in, to explore, to get curious, to learn something new, to make mistakes. So here's my challenge to you. If you haven't done something in religion, in legal, in medical, in business, do it. I'm not saying like go interpret in court on a murder case, if you've never interpreted in court, and you wouldn't be allowed to because you would have to first obviously be a court certified interpreter. But within reason, do new things or do very challenging things with preparation. So that's one of my challenges. And I think I wanted to mention something, but it slipped my mind, and maybe that's for the best. So here are my calls to action. Become a grandmaster in your language pair, interpreting or translation, or be both. They honestly really do complement each other. Just like bullet chess complements rapid chess and maybe even classical chess. Like for example, sometimes if you're in a time crunch, which is called Zugzwang, German word, I forget what it means. Julian, you tell us, leave a comment below. But if you're in a time crunch, then having played bullet chess helps you because you can think really quick on your feet. On the other hand, if you've played like classical chess, and if you analyze positions, then you already know some things when you're playing blitz and you don't have to think about them. That's why translation and interpreting, I think, tie in very well with each other. Because if you're an interpreter and you also translate, then you've already analyzed these positions in translation. You've already found the best synonym, you've already found the best term, and you don't have to think about it. On the other hand, if you're a translator but you also interpret, then you learn to trust your intuition, and you don't have to sit there and sweat for 5 hours over one term, because what would you do in interpreting? You would just say it. And sometimes the best the very best choice in translation is also the very first choice. And then we doubt ourselves, which we're very good at. Back to calls to action. Become a grandmaster. Actually take up chess, because it's great. It's great for the mind, it's great for life. It's the principles of chess are the principles of life, because chess is a microcosm of battle. So it's sort of like, you know, if you like things like the art of war, there's strategy, there's tactics. You learn to keep your cool. So it's learn chess. Why not? And aim for the next level in whatever it is you're in, translation or interpreting. So learn the basics if you know that you're missing the basics. I know that in chess, my potential does not correspond with my current level because I'm missing some of the basics. Like, I feel uncertain in some endgames because I've always thought they're boring, and I never started like queen against rook or rook against pawn endgames, but that's why I don't like going into endgames. But if I feel confident about those boring endgames, then I could easily just materialize in the middle game and go into endgames. You know, so fill in the gaps. If you know you have a gap in like medical terminology, or if you know that you have a gap in, let's say it's long segments, or lists of factual information, fill in that gap, because filling in that gap gives you confidence. Just like recently, it's not very difficult, but I never took the time to learn a two bishop checkmate. I learned it recently. It's not very hard, it's very easy, and now I know that I can do it in any game, unless it's a huge time crunch, but even probably in a time crunch I could do it. So it builds you up as a chess player. Same with an interpreter or translator. If you have gaps, fill them in. Okay, this is absolutely enough of me talking. Thank you for watching. May you be the best linguist that you're meant to be. And what does it, guys, say? Like my video, subscribe to the channel, share it with others. I'm doing it as a gift to the profession, so I would be super, super grateful if you share it, if you watch the videos, if you become better, and comment. If this helps you, please comment, please let me know, because then I will have known, to use a fancy tense, that I'm not doing this in vain. Alright, out for now.